Look, I've spent 35 years in macro. I ran hedge fund sales at Goldman Sachs. I've called the 2008 financial crisis, the 2012 European sovereign debt crisis, and I've watched empires, real empires, follow the same pattern to their destruction. And what I'm about to show you is the single most important framework I've ever developed for understanding where America actually is right now. Not where CNBC tells you, not where politicians promise, where we actually are. There's a pattern, a sequence, 7 stages that every global superpower has followed on their path to collapse. Spain followed it, Britain followed it, the Soviet Union followed it, and the United States. We're at stage 5, deep inside the pattern. Not approaching it, we're in it. This isn't doom-mongering. This is math. This is history. And if you understand it, you can position yourself to not just survive what's coming, but to thrive through the greatest wealth transfer in human history. Let me show you the framework. Subscribe if you want to understand the macro forces that actually move markets. Part 1. The pattern recognition framework. Before I walk you through each empire, you need to understand what collapse actually looks like, not in textbooks, in practice, what it means when a superpower dies. See, I've studied this for decades. And here's what most people miss. Imperial collapse doesn't start with invasion. It doesn't start with military defeat. It starts with economics, with currency, with debt. The empire extends beyond its ability to maintain itself. Military bases everywhere, wars on multiple fronts, promises it cannot keep, debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still works. The military still wins battles. The government still makes promises. But beneath the surface, the foundation is cracking. Then comes the acceleration. Allies start hedging. Enemies test boundaries. Trade partners seek alternatives. The reserve currency status erodes. And suddenly, the advantages that made you powerful become vulnerabilities. Your currency, once demanded by everyone, comes flooding back home. Your military spread across the world becomes unsustainable. Your promises, once guaranteed by strength, become empty words. This is what I call the everything code applied to empire. Liquidity, the master variable, eventually turns against you. And when it does, the collapse is faster than anyone expects. Let me show you how it happened 3 times before. Part 2. Spain, the original blueprint, 1500s-1700s. Let's start with Spain, the first global empire, the original template for what we're watching unfold right now. After Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492, Spain became the first true world power. They conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, seized control of the richest gold and silver mines ever discovered. By 1550, Spanish galleons were bringing home 200 tons of silver per year. By 1600, over 400 tons annually. The Spanish real was the global reserve currency. Everyone wanted Spanish silver. Sound familiar? A country that controls the money supply of the world and believes that makes them invincible. Here's where the 7 stages begin. Stage 1. Military overextension. King Philip II had more money than any monarch in history, and he spent it on empire. Wars everywhere, simultaneously, against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England's navy, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, Spain had military commitments on 4 continents. Half of Spain's revenue went to the military, and still it wasn't enough. The math never works when you're fighting everyone everywhere. I learned this at Goldman. Leverage amplifies both gains and losses. Military overextension is just another form of leverage. Stage 2. Currency debasement. Here's where it gets interesting for macro guys like me. The Spanish crown couldn't pay its bills with taxes alone, so they did what every failing empire does: they debased the currency. They started mixing copper into silver coins. A coin that was supposed to be pure silver became 50% copper, then 75% copper. The face value stayed the same, but the real value plummeted. By 1599, Philip III introduced the purely copper vellon coinage. By 1600, Spanish silver coins contained barely any silver. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value. Inflation exploded. This is exactly what we're doing today. We're not mixing copper into silver coins, we're just printing unlimited paper. The mechanism is different, the result is identical. The Spanish were debasing at maybe 5–10 per year during their worst periods. We're debasing at 8% per year every year since 2008. That's my 11% hurdle rate calculation. 8% debasement plus 3% measured inflation. Stage 3, debt spiral. Spain borrowed constantly from Italian bankers, from German bankers, From anyone who would lend. By 1557, less than 20 years into Philip's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted on their debts, restructured, and kept borrowing. They declared bankruptcy again in 1560, again in 1575, again in 1596, again in 1607, again in 1627, again in 1647. 7 bankruptcies over 90 years. Each time they promised reforms, each time they went right back to borrowing and spending. The United States hasn't technically defaulted, but we've done something just as dangerous. We've made the debt unpayable through any means except inflation. The debt-to-GDP ratio at the end of 2025 hit 100%. Interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion per year, more than we spend on defense. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. Here's what people don't understand about Spain's collapse. They had all the gold and silver in the world, and it destroyed them. Because when you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why innovate when you can just spend? Spanish nobility considered work beneath them. Manufacturing declined, agriculture stagnated. All the wealth flowed to importing goods from other countries. The gold and silver that came from the Americas went straight back out to pay for French wine, Italian silk, Dutch goods. Spain became a conduit. Wealth flowed through them, but none of it stayed. This is America today. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted, shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam. We import $800 billion more than we export annually. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while the silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while dollars flow out. Stage 5. Social decay. With the economy failing, crime exploded. Beggars filled the streets of Madrid. Productive citizens emigrated. The best minds left for France, England, the Netherlands, countries that were building, creating, growing. Spain was left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. No one creating wealth, everyone consuming it. Stages 6 and 7, loss of empire and collapse. By 1640, Spain lost Portugal. By 1650, they lost the Netherlands, their richest territory. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was a shell, still large on paper, but economically dead. They went from the world's superpower to a secondary power in less than a century, and they never recovered. Spain today is a regional European country, pleasant, cultured, but irrelevant on the world stage. The descendants of the conquistadors are a tourist destination. That's what imperial collapse looks like. Part 3. Britain, the sun that set 1900 seconds. Now let's jump forward 300 years. Britain, the empire where the sun never set. At its peak, Britain controlled 25% of the world's land surface, 400 million subjects. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Every major trade contract was denominated in pounds. Every central bank held British bonds. London was the financial centre of the world, and just like Spain 300 years earlier, they believed it was permanent. Stage 1. Military overextension. By 1900, Britain had military commitments everywhere. India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They had to defend territory on 6 continents. The cost was enormous. And when World War I started in 1914, Britain faced a choice: stay neutral and let Europe destroy itself, or jump in and bankrupt the empire to win. They chose to fight. World War I cost Britain over $40 billion. That's $1 trillion in today's money. They borrowed from everyone, mostly from the United States. By 1918, Britain owed America billions. The creditor had become the debtor. Stage 2. Currency debasement. The pound sterling was supposed to be backed by gold, but the war had drained Britain's gold reserves. They'd shipped gold to America to pay for weapons, food, supplies. By 1920, Britain's gold reserves were half what they'd been in 1914, but they tried to maintain the pound's value. Anyway, they went back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate in 1925. The problem: the pound was overvalued, British exports became too expensive, manufacturing declined, unemployment rose. By 1931, they couldn't hold it anymore. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't keep its promises. This is exactly what happened in 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar was overvalued. Gold was flowing out. So we broke the promise, and the debasement began in earnest. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Britain never recovered from World War I debt. And then World War II started. Another $120 billion in costs, more borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed the United States and Canada more than Britain's entire GDP. They emerged from the war with debt at nearly 250% of GDP. The war was won, but the empire was finished. They couldn't defend it anymore. couldn't afford it, couldn't maintain it. Stages for -7, collapse of empire in 1947. Britain gave up India, the crown jewel, the source of wealth for 200 years. Gone, over the next 20 years. They lost everything. Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books, and the pound kept falling. In 1914, £1 equaled $4.87. By 1940, it was $4.03. By 1949, they devalued 30% to $2.8. By 1967, another devaluation to $2.4. By 1980, $2.3. Today, around $1.25. The global reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain tried to maintain pretense, permanent seat on the UN Security Council, nuclear weapons, special relationship with America. But everyone knew the truth. They were a former power, a museum of what used to be great. The transition from pound to dollar took about 30 years, from 1914 to 1944, when Bretton Woods formalized the dollar's dominance, but the real decline, that was compressed into the decade after World War II. Part 4. The Soviet Union, the 9/00 collapse 1945 to 1991, now the most recent example, and the most instructive for what's coming. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a superpower, nuclear weapons, massive military, control over Eastern Europe, satellites in space, and they believed they were the future. Communism would bury capitalism. The Soviet model would dominate. For 45 years, they competed with America, matched us militarily, built more tanks, more missiles, more troops. But beneath the surface, the economy was dying. Stage 1. Military overextension. The Soviet Union spent 15–20% of GDP on the military. That's triple what America spent. They had to match American technology, American reach, American alliances, but their economy was a fraction of the size. They were in Afghanistan, propping up Cuba, supporting Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia, everywhere. America had influence. They had to counter. The cost was unsustainable. Stage 2. Economic stagnation, their version of debasement. The Soviet economy stopped growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue kept them afloat, but nothing else worked. Factories produced junk, farms failed, technology fell decades behind. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was importing grain. A country with some of the best farmland on earth couldn't feed itself. Why? Because central planning doesn't work, because innovation dies under control, because no one produces when there's no incentive. Their currency, the ruble, was never a real currency. It couldn't be exchanged internationally. Even Soviet citizens didn't trust it. They used dollars when they could get them. Stages 3–5. The acceleration. By 1985, oil prices dropped. Soviet gold reserves were depleting. They were running out of real money. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe left. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany gone in a year. The satellites that gave the Soviet Union strategic depth vanished. The Soviet government couldn't stop it. They were broke. Stages 6–7. Complete collapse. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. Let me say that again. 900 days from Berlin Wall to complete dissolution. No war, no invasion, just economic implosion. The military couldn't be paid. The government couldn't function. The ruble became worthless. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed from internal economic failure. The pattern played out again. Overextension, currency failure, debt, loss of empire, collapse. Part 5. The United States, where are we now? Now here's what should keep you awake at night. The United States is following the exact same pattern, stage by stage, decision by decision, almost like we're reading from the same script. Let me walk you through it. Stage 1. Military overextension. Check. The United States has over 750 military bases in 80 countries. We have troops in 150 countries. We're committed to defending Europe through NATO, defending Japan, South Korea, the Philippines. Our military budget is $850 billion annually, more than the next 10 countries combined, and it's not enough. We're stretched thin. Equipment is aging. Recruitment is down, and we have commitments we can't fulfill. If China invades Taiwan, if Russia pushes into NATO territory, if Iran closes the Persian Gulf, we can't respond to all of it simultaneously. Just like Spain, just like Britain, just like the USSR. Stage 2. Currency debasement. Check. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became pure fiat. Since 2000, the money supply has increased 400%. Since 2020, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We're not mixing copper into silver coins, we're just creating unlimited digital entries. The mechanism is modern, the result is ancient. My hurdle rate calculation, 8% annual debasement plus 3% measured inflation equals 11%. That's how much you need to earn just to stay even, just to maintain purchasing power. The S&P 500 returning 10% per year. You're actually going backwards. The market isn't going up, the dollar is going down. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Stage 3, debt spiral check. The United States owes $38 trillion as of late 2025. That's over 120% of GDP based on debt held by the public. Interest payments alone hit nearly $1 trillion in fiscal year 2025. That's almost triple what they were in 2020 when we paid $345 billion. We're paying more on interest than on Medicare, more than on national defense. The Congressional Budget Office projects interest will reach $1.8 trillion by 2035, and that's if rates stay where they are. We run deficits every year. $2.2 trillion added in fiscal year 2025 alone, $6 billion per day, $70,000 per second. We're borrowing to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the definition of a debt spiral. Spain defaulted 7 times. Britain borrowed until it collapsed. The USSR ran out of money. We're on the same path. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity check. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume. But we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted. Shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam, we import $800 billion more than we export annually. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything. Medicine, electronics, steel, even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while the silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while dollars flow out. And just like Spain, when the money stops flowing, we're in trouble. Stage 5. Social decay check. Trust in institutions is at all-time lows. Crime is rising. Homelessness is exploding. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans annually. Fertility rates are collapsing. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't build anything. The best and brightest. Many are checking out, moving abroad, going remote, opting out of the system entirely. The signs of decay are everywhere, but everyone pretends it's fine. It's not fine. We're at stage 5 of 7. The Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before complete collapse. So did Britain. Spain lasted longer, but the pattern is the same. We're not at the end yet, but we're deep inside the sequence. Part 6. Stages 6 and 7. What's coming? Stage 6. Loss of reserve currency status. This is when it accelerates, when allies start diversifying, when trade moves to other currencies, when the dollar comes flooding back home because no one needs to hold it anymore, and we're seeing early signs. The dollar's share of global reserves has dropped from 71% in 1999 to around 57% today, the lowest since 1994. BRICS nations are developing alternatives. Central banks are buying gold at record rates. Gold's share of global reserves has risen from 13% to nearly 30%. China now settles roughly 1/3 of its foreign trade in yuan, up from 20% in 2022. Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil. Russia and China bypassing the dollar entirely. The petrodollar system that's propped up dollar demand since 1974. It's fraying at the edges. Stage 7. Collapse, not gradual decline. Sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Britain lost the empire in 20 years. Spain took longer, but the result was the same. When the reserve currency fails, when the debt becomes impossible, when the military can't be funded, it doesn't decline gracefully. It collapses quickly, brutally, and everyone who thought it couldn't happen here learns the same lesson every empire learns. It can, and it does. Part 7. The macro framework. How to position. Now here's where my everything code framework becomes critical. See, most people hear this analysis and they panic. They sell everything. They buy bunkers and canned goods. That's the wrong response. Because here's what every empire collapse has in common. Massive wealth transfer. Not wealth destruction, wealth transfer. When Spain collapsed, the Dutch rose. When Britain fell, America rose. When the Soviet Union imploded, the West absorbed the gains. The wealth doesn't disappear. It moves, from those who don't understand the pattern to those who do. From those holding the debasing currency to those holding scarce assets. The positioning framework. 1. Understand what's really happening. The dollar isn't going up or down randomly, it's being systematically debased to manage the debt. This is policy, this is intentional, and it will continue until approximately 2032 when the debt cycle potentially forces a reset. Every government, every central bank needs a weaker dollar to service their dollar-denominated debts. This is the purest form of global liquidity. 2. owned scarce assets in every empire collapse, the same assets preserved and grew wealth. Gold rose during every currency crisis in history. Central banks are buying at record rates for a reason. They know what's coming. Land, physical, productive assets that can't be printed, but not just any land, productive farmland, strategic real estate, technology networks. This is what's different about this cycle. We have Bitcoin, we have Solana, we have digital scarcity for the first time in history. 3. The exponential age difference. Here's where this collapse differs from Spain, Britain, and the USSR. We're entering what I call the exponential age: AI, blockchain, tokenization. These technologies are deflationary. They increase productivity. They create new forms of value. The Roman Empire couldn't innovate its way out of currency debasement. Spain couldn't. Britain couldn't. The Soviets definitely couldn't. But we might have tools they didn't have. My positioning: 80-90 in major crypto networks: Bitcoin, Solana, Sui. These are the highest beta plays on liquidity expansion and the escape valve from fiat debasement. Network effects compound. Metcalfe's law: the more people join, the more valuable the network becomes. 4. The timeline based on the debt refinancing cycle and the pattern of previous collapses. Stage 5 social decay. 2022-2026. We're here. Stage 6 reserve currency erosion. 2026-2032. Stage 7 potential restructuring or collapse. 2032-2035. This isn't precise. The Soviet collapse was faster than anyone expected. Britain's took longer, but the sequence is locked in once you've completed stages 1-5. The only question is timing. Part 8. Why most people won't act. 3 empires followed this pattern: Spain, Britain, the USSR. Each believed they were exceptional. Each believed they were different. Each believed the rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong every single time. We're telling ourselves the same lies right now. We're different. We have technology. So did Britain. They invented. The Industrial Revolution didn't save them. We have the dollar. Spain had the real. Britain had the pound. Reserve currency status is a symptom of power, not a cause. When the power fades, the currency follows. We're America. That's what every empire says. Rome was eternal. Spain was chosen by God. Britain ruled the waves. The Soviet future was inevitable. The pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain empire without productive capacity. You cannot debase your currency without consequences. You cannot avoid stages 6 and 7 once you've completed 1-5. The sequence is locked in. Since 2020, we've accelerated every stage, printed more money, increased more debt, extended military commitments, hollowed out production, fractured society. We're not walking the path anymore, we're sprinting down it. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe America can do what Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union couldn't. Maybe this time really is different, but the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. And history, which has watched empires die the same way over and over, says we're about to learn the lesson. The difference is, now you know. Now you understand the framework, the 7 stages, where we are, what comes next. The greatest wealth transfer in history is approaching. The question is, which side will you be on? If this opened your eyes to where we actually are in the sequence, subscribe, because when we hit stages 6 and 7, you'll want to understand what happened and why. The answers aren't hiding in the future. They're written in the past, and I've just shown you where to look.